the exterior is in good condition, because that is one thing that I'm just not prepared to tackle, and I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. So let's get to the inside, because that's the part everybody really cares about.
Oh whoa, so I am excited because today I'm going to actually sit down and smoosh together all my video footage of my camper trailer remodel start to finish. These videos are really taking me back in time, and I'm having some mixed emotions just looking at them. The footage is all sped up, so go ahead and fasten your seatbelt, grab a glass of rosé. Hopefully you don't get whiplash from watching this. I was tempted to actually make no commentary and just leave the videos blank because, quite frankly, they're pretty self-explanatory. But for anybody else going through this process, I do have a few helpful tips I might add in along the way. In rewatching this DIY project, I realized there are definitely a few things I might do differently if I was tackling a project like this again in the future. I start out with the cleanup of the camper, and this is by far the easiest part of the entire remodel project. Technically, it just involves breaking things down and getting them out of the trailer. I wasn't anticipating just how difficult it would be to get some of the larger items out of a camper though. These campers have especially tiny doors that have metal frames, and so that was a very challenging task, getting out the futon, dismembering the lazy boy, and later, as you'll see, getting the fridge out was nearly impossible. Taking out all these smaller items like the shower curtain, the carpeting, the hardware on the walls, that was a pretty gratifying and quick experience. I think starting out with this DIY project, I had a lot of pent-up nervous energy. I have never owned a camper before, and all of this was really new to me, and I wasn't really sure how it was going to go. So taking apart and breaking down things was really easy and a very good way to start. A little backstory on this camper: I bought it off Craigslist for $4,000 cash that I had in my savings. It just kind of seemed meant to be because it was for sale really near my house, and the guy actually offered to deliver it for free, and everything kind of just worked out magically to where I felt like I was supposed to buy it, so I did. I wasn't actually sure what the purpose of the camper was going to be, but I knew I wanted it to actually be stationary behind my garage. I certainly had no intention of traveling around with it. So my goal was for it to look a little bit more cottagey and a little bit less like a travel trailer. I wanted to make it really settled in place on the exterior, and the interior to just be a nice maybe guest quarters or office space. When I started this DIY camper remodel, it was the middle of the summer. I live down here by the Texas coast, so it's very high humidity, so every time I'm out here working, I am literally drenched in sweat. I really embrace it. I actually just wear long sleeves to protect myself from mosquitoes, and I like to work up a good sweat every day. I feel like it helps me detox all the toxins, and I just really look at it as my chance to work out. I don't go to the gym. This is what I do instead. You can see the process of just clearing everything out of the camper took a large majority of the first few weeks of owning the trailer. Around this time, I really started losing a lot of steam and just getting super tired. Outside of doing my DIY projects, I property manage for a job, and then I also have 2 kids, both under the age of 10, so my life is really full even without having this type of a DIY project. It kind of makes the completion of this project all the more meaningful because it was such a challenge to get this done in such a limited amount of free time that I have. Here you can see I'm really struggling with this fridge. This fridge was pretty much an antique. I did plug it in to see if it worked, but it didn't, so I had to figure out a way to get it out of the trailer. I have no idea how they got it in here in the first place. Did they just build the camper around it? I just don't know. Okay, so first impressions being back in here. It's been a week since I've been over here, and wow, this place is really torn up and it's really kind of a big mess. I mean, like, look at this place. It's just totally, I don't even know where to get started with this place. I end up unfortunately just having to saw right through the entire fridge. Help me with this fridge here, Leah. Look at this problem I have.
Polymeric sand.
How long you gonna be here?
Forever.
Are you gonna be here for a little while?
Yes.
I got a customer in the chair.
Go ahead.
And I'll be right.
Just about every day that I'm out here working, my 80-year-old neighbor, Mr. Leo, comes over to say hi. We've been neighbors for about 5 years now, and it's gotten to the point where I feel like my day almost isn't complete unless I see him at least one time. To my utter astonishment, he has no car and no internet installed in his home and does not have a smartphone. So I really think I am his primary source of entertainment when he's not working part-time as a barber out of his home. Okay, here I am having removed the upper cabinets, and wow, this really helps increase the visual space inside this camper. I really love taking stuff out of it. It just makes this tiny space open up so nicely. Moving on to the bathroom section, I discovered a really bad soft spot in the floor. I did my best to patch it up with some spare plywood from the garage. And would you look at this massive pile of junk I pulled out of this tiny camper? Could you believe all that stuff actually fit in there in the first place? Doing floor repair inside this trailer was not anticipated for me and definitely wasn't fun. When I bought this trailer, I think I was imagining I was just going to do some cabinet painting and some other light DIY projects, but as I got further and further into this project, I realized there were some more serious renovations that I needed to do to get it up to par. That was kind of a little bit of a discouraging process for me to go along cleaning things up and discover more and more work that needed to be done. That was a little bit more skilled labor. I do think in my head I kind of wanted a slightly easier project than this was turning out to be, and so I was kind of getting a little bit more increasingly frustrated the further I went along. Okay, here you see I'm using spray foam in the cracks. This is something I saw done on other YouTube channels to help stabilize a floor in an RV camper and just smooth things out. And I do think the technique worked pretty nice, but again, it's not ideal. One thing I absolutely wanted to do was remove this itty bitty tiny sink. I mean, this sink is so small you could probably only wash like one cereal bowl in it. So if there's no dishwasher in a camper or anything like that, you absolutely have to have a large sink for washing all your pots and pans. I was really happy to take out this entire counterpiece and the sink especially. Personally, I think I would rather just give up counter space to have a massive sink, because you can always cover a sink up with a cutting board or something like that if you need the extra workspace. Okay, the next step with the spray foam is just to remove the excess and then make sure things are smooth and even. On the exterior of the trailer, I had to do a lot of bug proofing. There were a tremendous amount of wasp nests built up in all the outside ventilations, and some of them even got inside the camper. You can see there's a wasp nest out here too that I had to take care of. I recommend putting screening on everything. I used aluminum tape to stick it in place, and voila. Okay, so my next big project with this camper was to take care of all the exterior rust on the outside. Boy, did this project really change the exterior look of the camper. It really made it look much newer. It was an inexpensive project. I just bought a few cans of rust neutralizer spray and then also got black spray paint, and it worked out really nice. I just scraped everything down really well with some wire brushes first, and the outcome was really good. It was a really cheap, affordable upgrade for the exterior look on the trailer.
Since I was last out here, it has rained several times. We've had several really intense rain downpours, and that's good because we were extremely dry this summer, so we really needed the rain. However, I am now more convinced than ever that I probably do have some type of water leak on the roof of my travel trailer, so I'm very anxious today to get up on the roof and see what I'm actually dealing with. In a minute I'll take you inside and we can look and see what is making me think that we do have a water leak with this travel trailer.
I would say this is kind of the start of the decline with my DIY project. I think this is where things kind of started to take a sour turn for me. I wasn't anticipating having to do soft spot floor repair inside the trailer. That wasn't too bad, but as I started to suspect there was a water leak in the walls and in the ceiling in the back bathroom corner of the trailer, I just started to get a sinking feeling in my heart because I knew I was going to have to get up on the roof and maybe start ripping up and doing much more invasive DIY repair work. If I could give one piece of advice to other DIYers wanting to do a trailer remodel, it would definitely be just to inspect the trailer much better at time of purchase for water leaks. I'm going to give myself a pass because this is my first time doing something like this and I was just really excited, and on top of that I did get it for a really cheap price. It wasn't really too big of a financial investment, so it's to be expected that it's not going to be in good condition. I just don't think I was mentally prepared to do the work. Slowly ripping open the roof was a little bit of a traumatizing process for me. I had no idea what I was going to find, but once I opened it up, I saw it was just insulation and basically 2x4s. So I kind of calmed down once I saw what was underneath the roofing material. It didn't really lessen the amount of work though, but I just felt a little bit of a mental load once I opened it up and I saw it was materials that I had on hand and that I could work with. So being in a really wet climate, which I'm in, is just really disastrous for doing a project like this if you don't have it parked in a garage or under some type of a covering. I did my best to cover the camper with a tarp, but it wasn't really successful, so everything kept getting rained on. It was rainy season and it just was a huge ongoing mess. I think around this time I started really mentally hitting a wall. I was pushing forward with the project each day when I came out to work, but I definitely was starting to feel a little bit of stress and anxiety tackling a project of this size. Here I am removing the exterior roller shade because I'm just not going to use it, and this one is pretty ripped up and shredded. It was actually really heavy and difficult to remove. Once I took off some of the roofing material, the back bathroom really lightened up and became really bright, so that really encouraged me. I love to see it wasn't like a dark cave back there anymore, but it still was very unnerving to see such a huge gaping hole in the trailer and know that it wasn't covered, there was no covering overhead, and we were in the middle of wet season. At this point, I just kept going with taking more and more stuff down, and the further I went, the more damage I would find, so that was very disconcerting. There really was, of course, no going backwards with any of this DIY project, so I just had to push through and see where it was going to finally end. Taking out the skylights was super time consuming because I had to pick up all of the sealant that was put over the screws. With these flat roofs, they really put a lot of sealant on everything, and it's just a waterproof stuff because water tends to sit on a flat roof, something I was learning about trailers as I've owned one now. In removing all this roofing material, I found that the supporting wood underneath was pretty badly rotted and damaged in many places, so I tried my best to come up with a strategy to add more supports to it without necessarily pulling the boards out, and I think it worked fairly well. At this point, I was just physically completely exhausted by this project, and if I was being honest with myself, I don't think I was really enjoying this DIY project or having fun with it. It wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. This kind of felt like something I didn't sign up for or didn't have the skill set to deal with, quite frankly. The more I worked up on the roof, the more decay I found in the wood and the more I had to take out, and the destruction just kept going. One positive of opening the roof up though was that I decided to add an additional skylight over the top bunk at the back, and that brought a lot more light to the back end of the trailer. So you can see I added another skylight over on the left side, and that was a positive that came out of having to rip up the roof. Definitely I'm no carpenter, but I have to say on this project I don't think I did too bad of a job. I actually think it turned out okay. And here comes the part where I had my full-blown meltdown and just stopped filming because I didn't know what I was doing and I couldn't handle filming while working at the same time. So I'll just summarize quickly what happened during that period of time, which is that I closed in the roof, I put in the skylights, I sealed them in place, You'll actually see me do another skylight later so you can see the process more involved. I went ahead and purchased a fridge and I put down some laminate flooring. So I definitely skipped ahead a little bit, and I think it was good for my mental health. This project just got to be a little too overwhelming, and any little extra thing added on top was too much for me to handle. Since I felt like I was in a better mental space, I started filming again, and I picked up in a little bit of an easier place, which is the interior painting. Seeing this paint go on was very cathartic for me. It was something I'd been waiting for such a long time. It immediately changed the space and opened it up and made it seem so light and airy on the interior. I started out by putting white primer on everything on every single surface, and that worked really well as a base for just regular white paint inside the RV camper. The change was magnetic and I absolutely loved it. It really reinstilled a lot of hope inside me for this project. The cut-in work for painting in a travel trailer was immensely time-consuming. I think I really just equate it to painting a full-blown house at this point. There's just as many nooks and crannies and corners that have to be done, and painting around the edges of windows. It was a lot more than expected. Finally getting the solid white paint rolled onto the walls really dramatically changed the space. Everything cleaned up so nicely at that point and almost looked brand new, like factory reset. Kind of the same way that pulling out the carpeting and the upholstery actually changed the smell of the camper. It smelled a lot newer once all the upholstery was pulled out. One of the next biggest visual transformations the trailer underwent was painting all the cabinetry. Absolutely love the transformation that painting the cabinetry did for this trailer. I chose a very high gloss sheen paint for all the cabinetry, plus I like a little bit of shimmer on my cabinets, and so I think that this will work well for that. And here's where I really started shopping for the camper, both offline and in store, just picking up all the little things that the camper is going to need on the interior. It's not relevant to the completion of the camper, but I mean, come on, look how cute this baby is. He's absolutely adorable. He truly has been the perfect distraction for all of my DIY projects. Okay, well here you see I start to unload a lot of the products that I purchased for inside the trailer. Some of the bigger items I purchased for the trailer was a futon mattress. I got a really high quality memory foam futon mattress, and then I bought a futon frame which I need to build later. I go ahead and take a break to install some trim work around the counters. I splurged on a little bit more expensive trim work, and I think that that's the beauty of having a small space, is you can kind of get a little bit more nicer quality items because you're doing such a tiny space. It's not that expensive. The bigger ticket purchase items for this trailer remodel would probably just be the window AC unit and the mini fridge and the futon. Those were really the only big interior expenses for this particular project. Of course, all the parts and pieces like the flooring and the paint and stuff like that can really add up for a project like this also. Here I'm putting down a small rug that I bought for the camper, and I think it's the perfect size for this space. I think the Navajo blueprint really looks good against the oak floors I picked out. And yes, I'm actually putting on a heater in the space because the weather has completely changed and now it is cold. Constructing furniture in such a tiny space was very daunting. It was super challenging to put this futon together. There was such little space that I actually had to remove my shoes to construct this piece of furniture, and there were truly about 1 million pieces of wood for the futon that I picked out online. I was pretty happy with the outcome of it. It was a really good height for sitting on, and then it was also fairly easy to set up and set down. I was a little bit sad that so much space was taken up. It was kind of nice to just have a blank empty room to walk around in. It's a very large piece of furniture, but it was necessary to have a bed in here. The memory foam mattress that I bought for this futon did take a very long time to expand. I was a little disappointed when I first unrolled it, but over the next few days it turned into a nice addition to the camper. Okay, here you see me replacing the last skylight in the camper. This one sits over the living room area, and I decided last minute to replace it because I thought it would just help the interior aesthetic if I replaced the yellow cracked seal on the inside of the trailer. So you can see me replace it start to finish here, and it worked out pretty good. It is undeniably labor intensive to replace these skylights, but at this point I think it's just second nature to me. I don't mean to brag, but by this point I'm pretty much expert level at waterproofing camper roofs. With some of the worst parts of this DIY project behind me now, I do think I'm starting to feel a little bit more relaxed. I knew by now I'd definitely picked up a few new skills that were going to stick with me for life, and that's always a really big plus for me. Plus, as you really get into a project and tear it apart, it becomes less and less scary once you know how everything fits together. So at this point in time, I think that the total cost for this DIY project is sitting at about $6,000. There's the initial cost of the camper for $4,000 as my base price. Then I started buying other things like the mini fridge, the flooring, the sink, the faucet, and the paint cans, and then the skylights and some trim pieces for the interior. There's also the futon and the futon mattress that I added in. So I think that it's going to be at about $6,000 right now. I think my total finishing price for the camper and everything sits at about $8,000. So all in, the camper and all the repair work done was $8,000, and I did all the labor, of course, myself for free. I did additionally pay for electric, plumbing, and sewage to come out to where my camper is located, but of course you wouldn't be factoring that price in if you were going to be parking it somewhere with the hookups already in place. Okay, here I am going in and finally painting my yellow tub a nice white crisp color. For some reason my phone wasn't filming this in the right format, but I think you get the idea. It turned out a lot better than it was, and I was really happy with how the spray paint method worked on the tub. It's right around this point in my DIY project that I think I started to pick up steam. Things started to kind of come together visually, and that really just lifted my spirits so much. Each day I would come out to the camper and I'd have like a huge list of things, like little things that I needed to do, and it was frustrating that each day it seemed like I could only get one thing on my list done. So it was slow, but it was doable work. By this point in the project I had to do some carpentry work and build this lower cabinet section over here, and I'm actually super impressed with how it turned out. I can't believe I built it. It's kind of one of those pinch me moments. The bathroom space just looked so bright and beautiful. I was so happy with how the bathroom had lightened up after all my intense skylight work that I had to do. In the kitchen here I'm adding some floating shelves. Really happy to finally put something up here. It looks so much better than the overhead cabinets that used to be here. I had to actually build a bathroom door for this camper because it didn't have one when I bought it, and I was really happy with how the bathroom door turned out. I'd never built a door before, and it turned out pretty well. By this point in the remodel, I think you can kind of see the direction I'm going in. Definitely there's a semblance of a habitable home inside this trailer now. If I could go back in time, a couple things I would do different in this remodel is I would actually take the time to make epoxy counters, and I would do a better, more solid backsplash. I actually still don't have any ideas of what kind of a backsplash I would do that works in a camper. I also think I would remove the second story bunk and just make a walk-in closet towards the back of the camper because nobody really likes sleeping on bunk beds, and I just would remove it altogether. All the cabinet doors I got with this camper were in really bad condition, but with some sanding and paint, they did turn out really nice. I could hardly wait for them to dry and to put them back in place because I really wanted to see how they finished off the interior space. Doing all the final cut-in work with the paint and caulking all the nooks and crannies inside the camper really finished things off nicely. I still couldn't believe that I actually built a lower cabinet for myself, and I was just really happy with how everything turned out. Up next was changing out all the light fixtures inside the trailer, and there were quite a few of them. I got some very simple RV lights that I found online, and I was a little disappointed to find there was not a wide selection of lights for campers available. At this point in time, I could really start doing some detailed work and thinking about different accents I wanted to add inside the camper. Most of the electrical work I did work successfully, but of course I blew a fuse, so I had to pause all my DIY work and do a little bit of electrical DIYing. Not my favorite way to spend a day, but the results were really good. With the paint on the walls and the paint on the cabinets being finished, the space just looked and felt so completed, even with all the loose wires and random boxes and little items that I have to install left. Not sure why, but I'm just like so thrilled about this door that I made. Maybe it's because it's the first door I constructed from scratch, but I'm really happy with it. I used a magnet to kind of help hold it in place, and I installed a mirror on the outside of it to kind of make the outside living room space appear a little bit bigger. I ordered black hinges for the cabinets, and as I'm waiting for them to arrive, I go ahead and start putting up all the tiny detailed work in this trailer. I want there to be as much counter space as possible, so I'm mounting the paper towels up high. I'm putting a lot of hooks on the walls so things can get up off the counters. Up next, I clear the counters and I get ready to put down some sticky contact paper. I ended up ripping this up later, even though it looks really nice right now, because unfortunately it just kept bubbling up and not staying in place. So I was super disappointed in the contact paper method for RV campers. Again, if I could go back in time, I would probably do epoxy counters or something that would last a lot longer. Here I have to DIY my own curtains because you can't just go buy curtains at any store. RV campers have very irregular sized windows, so you kind of have to make them from scratch yourself. I did want some color in this camper, so I went with an electric colored blue for a couple accent walls in the camper. And finally I got my new AC, and it's just in time for the summer months. Installing it was actually really difficult. It barely fit into place and it was really heavy. At last my hinges arrived so I could put all the cabinet doors in place, and wow, did that really transform the space. Absolutely loved the look of the kitchen once the cabinet doors were put into place. Here I am putting up peel and stick tiles from Dollar Tree for my backsplash and going ahead and putting down contact paper on the counters. Not a great option for the long run, but it did look temporarily nice. I can't believe it, but I'm really down to the finishing touches on this camper, and I'm just so ecstatic to even be doing these types of projects now. Since the inside has progressed so well, I moved to the outside of the camper and I go ahead and start cleaning up the outside of the trailer and making it look a little bit more like a cottage instead of a camper. With some shutters, a flower box, and some skirting, it really transformed the exterior of my trailer to this. You can find how I made my tiny little cement patio outside my trailer door in one of my other video shorts. Well, with this DIY project a wrap, there's really not much else on my to-do list other than to take some beautiful photos alongside my finished product. If you made it this far in the video, you might be just as crazy as me. This was an absolutely exhausting and educational DIY project. It's not a perfect job by any means, and I can see the flaws everywhere I turn inside this camper. That being said, it was destined for the junkyard before I plucked it from the path of destruction. Despite my DIY shortcomings and the flaws that remain, this camper is now a habitable space with very soft bedding, tons of storage, and fully functional utilities. Looking over this DIY project, I'm really taking into consideration all the new skills amassed that can now be applied to future DIY projects. So, would I ever do another camper DIY project again? Well, I think we'll both find out in the near future.